from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, what it is, folks, it's Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. Welcome to the Practitioner Brief. I'm your host. I'm the CISO, James Azar. So excited to have you with me this morning. Good morning to all of those tuning in. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you are watching us live for the first time, this is a 10 to 12 minute podcast. Sometimes we go 15, I'll admit, talking about the risk, impact, and mitigation of what's going on in the world today to help you create resiliency within your cybersecurity program. This is a daily show, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure to tune in then. Good morning to the awesome and lovely James McQuiggan. Good morning, good sir, watching us on YouTube this morning. That's lovely. So for those of you not watching us live and listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. We have a lot on the show today, including a Magecart goes server side and the latest tactic Changeup. CodeCov victims start to pour in. We talked about one yesterday, a new one disclosed today. UK government issues and seeking advice on how to defend their software supply chain. We've got a FBI alerts, 2 of them, including one that's a scumbag alert. So we'll talk about that. And 70 European and South American banks are targeted by a new strain of malware. We'll bring that to your attention as well on today's show. Today's show is supported by friends over at KnowBe4, Wistic, and Ativo Network, so make sure to check them out. Next week, today, meaning Tuesday, May 25th, I'll be doing a webinar with my good friend Juan Rodriguez, the CTO founder over at Wistic, and Nate Jones, the cybersecurity manager over at Airbnb. The link to register is right here in the show notes and also on your favorite social media network. Go sign up to the webinar. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be an unbelievable conversation. It's part of our CISO Talk webinar series. We're going to be talking about vendor risk management and modernizing it, as well as the software supply chain. You don't want to miss that. We're RSA week, folks. It's RSA week. A lot of stuff going on during RSA week. I'll be posting content over the next 3 days from a lot of companies that we've spoken with and are speaking with this week, including another live that we'll be doing later today with my friends over at Centrified. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that's going to be available on the CyberHub podcast page, so make sure to go there as well. And all kinds of content. We'll get to your comments here. Good morning to John. Sir, thank you so much for tuning in this morning. And now, without further ado, my ceremonial cup of coffee. I hope whatever you're drinking this morning, it's a beverage of choice. By the way, you guys are going to like this. I typically have a Masters, but if you're from Chicago or you're a Cubs fan, you'll love this. This was a gift from someone I know over in Chicago who's a big Cubs fan. So thank you for this and my double espresso. All right, let's get into today's show. We have a lot to talk about, 6 stories today, so we'll get right into it. Magecart goes server side in a tactic Changeup. The latest Magecart iteration is finding success with a new PHP web shell skimmer. So Magecart Group 12, known for skimming payment information from online shops, was fingered for last September's Gonzo attack on more than 2,000 e-commerce sites. And now Malwarebytes researchers have issued a new report explaining how they did it. They're detailing a new technical approach, and this approach is still very active according to the analysis. According to Malwarebytes lab threat intel team, the credit card skimmer group is using a PHP web shell to gain remote administrative access to these sites under attack to steal credit card data, but rather than using their previously favored JavaScript code, which they simply injected into vulnerable sites to lock the information, now they're using a PHP web shell. The file named is magento.png, attempts to pass itself as an image PNG, but does not have the proper PNG format for a valid image file, according to the report. The way it is injected in compromised sites is by replacing the legitimate shortcut icon with a path to the fake PNG file. But in this instant, the phony favicon is used to load a PHP web shell. The web shell is harder to detect and block, the report adds, because it injects the skimmer code on the server side rather than the client side. So that's a big move there. A few things. One, if you're using Microsoft Office 365, if you upgrade to their programs, you can essentially get a safe attachment feature on your Outlook inbox, which I recommend for anyone to do. It scans every single attachment. It recognizes whether it's in valid format or not. If it has anything in it, it strips it of it, something called a CDR, something very effective to deal with stuff like this. Also, you should run a check for magenta.png on the server side of your websites just to make sure that you're not a victim of this specific threat vector, especially if you have an online store. CodeCov hackers gained access to Monday.com's source code. The software supply chain just keeps getting worse by the day. I've long been an advocate that transparency is critical in cybersecurity. It's critical because that's how we learn how to defend ourselves. That's how we know to, be more aware of what's happening around us. Well, CodeCov is impacted a ton of companies. Now, Monday.com is the latest victim of the victim for the attackers. The platform's customers include prominent names like Uber, BBC, Adobe, Universal, Hulu, L'Oreal, Coca-Cola, and Unilever. The popular CodeCov has been a victim of a supply chain attack that lasted for 2 months. During this 2-month period, threat actors had modified the legitimate CodeCov bash uploader tool to exfiltrate environment variables. Using the credentials harvested from the tempered bash uploader, CodeCov attackers reportedly breached hundreds of customers' networks. Monday.com recently announced they were impacted by this, and in an F1 form filed this week with the US SEC, for Monday.com's proposed IPO, the company shared details on the extent of the CodeCov breach. After their investigation into the CodeCov breach, Monday.com found that an unauthorized actor had gained access to a read-only copy of their source code. However, the company states that to this date, there's no evidence that the source code was tampered with by the attackers or that any of its products are impacted. Additionally, the attacker did access a file containing a list of certain URLs pointing to publicly broadcasted customer forms and views hosted on our platform, and they have contacted the relevant customers to inform them how to regenerate these URLs. At this time, there's also no indication that Monday.com customers' data was affected by the incident, although the company continues to investigate as they spoke. One of the many, many victims in this supply chain attack yesterday, I reported it was Rapid7. Today, we're seeing Monday.com, and we've saw Twilio, HashiCorp. We can keep going. It's the list is extensive, and I think this is where CodeCov needed to be a bit more transparent, maybe just a tiny bit more. I'm not saying do it all, but a little bit of transparency goes a long way. Now these companies all have to deal with this. My biggest concern here, and I think the biggest risk for Monday.com or Rapid7 or any of these companies that have had their source code viewed, is if there's any vulnerabilities within your source code, if there's any bugs in your source code, if there's any backdoors in your source code. The attackers know that, and they're going to be taking advantage of it, and you probably don't know it until you find out about it. And so that's one thing here is, looking over one's source code now, even if it's read-only, and just having another pair of eyes on it to review it, to recognize any vulnerabilities or to create some minute changes within it to throw them off would be very, very effective right now. We'll move to our next story, where the UK government is seeking advice on defending against supply chain attacks. So given CodeCov, given the Colonial Pipeline incident, given SolarWinds, the UK government now is asking for the public's help on a way to strengthen their IT managed service providers across the country, as well as their software supply chain. The initiative is part of a nationwide effort called Cyber Resilience. It was set forth by the UK's National Cybersecurity Strategy Centre to safeguard businesses and organizations that increasingly rely on technology. There's a survey for the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport in the UK. All are requested to respond by midnight on Sunday, 11th July 2021. To assist analysis of responses, there's a 2,000 character limit per question, and you can talk about either supply chain risk management or managed service providers. In a press release, the DCMS stated that only 12% of organizations reviewed cybersecurity risks posed to them from their immediate suppliers, and that only 5% of the firms remediated vulnerabilities in the wider software supply chain. This is insane. These numbers show that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the software supply chain. And that's why I urge you to tune in to the webinar I'm doing next week with Nate Jones from Airbnb and Juan Rodriguez from Wistic. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about. The numbers here obviously state it. So please tune in, go sign up to the webinar. Even if you can't attend, you'll get the recording after the fact, so you can do so right now as well. 70 European banks and South American banks are under attack by a Bizarro banking malware. Dubbed Bizarro by Kaspersky researchers, the Windows malware is using affiliate or recruiting money mules to operationalize their attack, cashing out, or simply by helping with transfers. The financially motivated cybercrime gang is unleashing a ton of this stuff. The campaign consists of multiple moving parts, chief among them being the ability to trick users into entering two-factor authentication codes in fake pop-up windows that are then sent to the attackers, as well as its reliance on social engineering lures to convince visitors of banking websites into downloading a malicious smartphone app. Bizarro, which uses a compromised WordPress, Amazon, and Azure servers to host the malware, is distributed via an MSI package downloaded by victims from sketchy links and spam emails. Launching the package downloads a zip archive that contains a DLL written in Delphi, which subsequently injects the heavily obfuscated implant. What's more, the main module of the backdoor is configured to remain idle until it detects a connection to one of the hard-coded online banking systems. And they're doing this. It's predominantly in Spanish. And by the way, their Spanish is impeccable in these emails also. When Bizarro starts, it first kills all browser processes to terminate any existing sessions with online banking websites. And then when you restart, you're forced to re-enter your credentials. When you're re-entering your credentials, it's making you capture. It also disables the autocomplete in the browser, so you have to type it in order for them to get it. So if you see something like that happen on the US side, keep that in mind. It's a new functionality here. Typically, they test this stuff abroad, and then they come and target North America with it. Right now, it's heading into Europe and South America, but soon this will be knocking on our back door. So keep an eye out for this. It's something very effective to now maybe pass this along to your teams and employees within your organizations, especially account receivable and account payable. It's a short alert, but nonetheless worth it. Let's get into two FBI alerts. The first one is the FBI spots spear-phishing posing as Truist Bank to deliver malware. The threat actors impersonated Truist, the sixth largest U.S. bank, holding in a spear-phishing campaign, attempting to infect recipients with what looks like a remote access Trojan malware. They also tailored the phishing campaign to spoof the financial institutions through registered domain email subjects and an application, all appearing to be related to Truist. The pin was released in coordination with the DHS CISO and is designed to provide security professionals and network admins with the indication of compromise needed to detect and block such attacks. The FBI says the fraudulent loan amount was in line with the victim's business model. The phishing email also contained a link to download the application and the username and password for access. The phishing email appeared to originate from the UK-based financial institution, stating the U.S. financial institution's loan to the victim was confirmed and could be accessed through an application which appeared to represent the U.S. financial institutions. And it's essentially behind the $62 million loan is what they're looking for. And you can see here a lot more details. It's malware with information stealing capabilities. The malware deployed after recipients download and installed a malicious executable in the spear phishing email, which connects to the secure portal.online domain. Is further details on the virus total page for the malware sample shared by the FBI. The attackers used the malware to log keystrokes and take screenshots of the victim's screens. The capabilities of the malware include privilege escalation, communication over UDP network, system register manipulation, screenshot grabbing, listening for incoming communications, running a keylogger, communicating using DNS, file downloader dropper, communications over HTTP, code injection with create remote thread in a remote process. So keep that in mind. And our scumbag alert is the FBI's warning scammers targeting families of missing people. The FBI says that the warning comes in the form of a public service announcement issued through the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3. These actors identify missing persons through social media posts, gather information about the missing person and family to legitimize their ransom demands without ever having physical contact with the missing person. They're typically asking anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000, with $7,000 requested in multiple instances. This is a scumbag move. Scumbag alert. Scumbag alert. Scumbag alert. Please, if you know people who have anyone missing family, please spread the story across. The link is the first link in our story links here in the show notes. Please make sure to share this and post this. These families are the most vulnerable, and they're very likely to part with the money they don't have, because most of the people who go missing come from low-income families, and the families rarely have the money. They do a GoFundMe. They try to raise it through their own communities in order to pay a ransom when their loved ones really aren't there. So please make sure to share this story and bring it to people's attention, as well as share it with organizations that support missing people within your local community as well. So that's it for our practitioner brief today, folks. We'll be back later today with a live RSA coverage with our friends over at Centrify. We'll also have content posting on the CyberHub podcast audio page, as well as on our YouTube page. Great content. We're probably going to be posting 2 to 3 additional episodes over the next 3 days for you guys to actually enjoy and catch some subject matters. Every single one of these episodes, by the way, is 20 minutes long, so it's not like the traditional hour-long shows. We'll have a CISO Talk drop as well tomorrow. I'll be giving you a full-fledged into the panel I did with Sam Phillips, Ken Foster from Fiserv, Paul Farley from NCR at the Cyber FinTech event. The panel was just so good. People have been asking me to post it, so will be what I'll be posting tomorrow on CISO Talk. You don't want to miss it. It was a live panel with actual people, so you'll get to enjoy that as well. Folks, that's it for us here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for all your comments. If I didn't get to them, I do apologize. Just trying to keep the show within a anticipated time frame. That's it for us here. Stay tuned. Again, we'll be back on later today and tomorrow, 9 a.m., right here with another practitioner brief. Until then, folks, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.